Money moves. Never let you look at life. Keep it always cool. Yo, success ain't a straight line, they flip their fate. Turn setbacks to comebacks, now they're straight greats. From the grind to the shine, watch the pros improve. On unconventional money, it's the next gen groove. Genius minds outside the lines. On unconventional money, we rise and shine. Unconventional money moves, where success rewrites the rules.
Shannon, we got you here.
Pleasure to meet
Welcome.
you. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
yeah. Thanks for hopping on. I know we connected, and it seems like I'm not sure exactly what kind of strategies you're doing, but it seems like they are a bit unconventional. So I'm interested to learn more about them. I did a little bit of research and hearing about what y'all do and whatnot, but I'm interested to learn more about what y'all going on at Royal Legal Solutions. So
Awesome.
happy to have you here. How did you get involved with? Did you start this company? Like, let's get a little bit of a background of how you ended up where you are today.
Gladly. So I did not start Royal Legal Solutions. Royal Legal Solutions was started over 10 years ago and has over 3,000 clients now. I actually, during that time when Royal Legal Solutions started, I was probably still working in finance before going to my JD MBA program at Northwestern, where
Hmm.
I worked at a single family office, and it was at a time where the father and the son were actually transitioning from the leadership of that family office, and then went from my grad school program at Northwestern to work in Big Law, so some name brand law firms. And, I love what I learned. I think in law, one of the things that a lot of people don't necessarily get to see is that we take people's ideas, turn them into agreements, contracts, into the things that actually get constructed into businesses and what we see as corporations and everything. And I realized what people don't really understand is the infrastructure of the wealth system, how it works, and how to use it. No one's ever really gone to like an IKEA store and for wealth effectively. And because God help you if you try to put together one of those IKEA furniture packages without seeing a visual of it, you just can't. And most people have never done that. So I started a company called PEARLFECTIONIST where I teach the wealth system, but I also will consult out with firms and business owners and everything to help them implement these strategies. Royal Legal Solutions was already successfully doing that, but I have some abilities that could enhance what Royal Legal Solutions was already doing for clients and some experience that could translate very well to add more infrastructure and allow Royal Legal Solutions to grow. So,
Hmm.
specifically, for some of our clients, let's say someone is starting up a business, I can help them really understand. Everyone's like, oh, I have a business, I have an LLC. No, an LLC is more of like a backpack. And I'll tell clients this. If just because you have a backpack does not mean you have stuff to put in it. Sometimes people will have a business, and if they go through an airport to wherever they're going, they have all their clothing stuff in hand, no backpack, nothing to carry. You just go through TSA. You might lose some stuff along the way while you get to your destination. But if you put it in a backpack, it keeps everything contained. Well, some of the documentation, the operating agreement is like the zipper for the backpack. It keeps people from just reaching in whenever they want to. And being able to translate what these things are actually matters because people can understand why they're doing what they're doing and enough to have a conversation with a professional who can implement it and then ask for what they want. So I'll explain it to clients in a way where this actually helps them. But for businesses like Royal Legal Solutions, I will actually implement the processes that are required for whatever it is that we do. So our clients can have a smooth experience and on top of that, do things the way that the law requires them to do. And I have some exposure to certain types of tools like nonprofits and how they work, tax that will ultimately allow our clients to take advantage of more advanced strategies. And I collaborate with the team to do it.
Cool. So when you're working at this big law firm, What were you doing there that helped you translate to what you're doing now? Could you give us like an example of like a case that you worked on or what kind of work you were doing that led you on your journey to where you are today?
Gladly. So I started off at Kirkland and Ellis in their restructuring group and lateral with the team to Ropes and Gray doing restructuring. So restructuring is when everything goes wrong in the wealth system. So if you start by
Mhm.
dismantling something, you have to back into how it actually was supposed to work to begin with. And you're doing it when the stakes are the highest. And these are court ordered processes. Sometimes they're done out of court, but the courts have to approve ultimately what happened and what is being done. So you start to understand how the law itself really works and gets enforced. And in that, I saw, for example, somebody who, you looked at the stock market based off of the amount of shares they had in a company, they were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And by the time the net operating loss motion was, there was an order ordering that the stock was declared worthless. You got to
Mhm.
see that their net value went to nothing, like literally dust. And if you borrowed against that stock, ultimately y- your loans get called. And
Mhm.
so it's a great strategy to borrow from equity in order to avoid paying taxes. It is legal because it's a loan, but there are risks involved. So I started to understand all the trade offs that come with whatever decision we make in wealth and how we build it. From there, I really don't like litigating. I like understanding how it works, but I hate arguing with people. I'm a certified mediator. I'm like, how can we, what is it that you really need? So I like the contracts. I like coming to agreements. I would sometimes be working on different claims with different types of vendors, including some high powered big names that you would think of. And the team was like, go ahead and negotiate this. Chances are we're not going to get anywhere. And I would come back with an agreement. They're like, how did you do that? And I was just like, I asked them what they wanted and what they needed. I just had a conversation and found out what they wanted didn't actually conflict with what we needed. We just had to word things around it. And it was perfectly legal. So it was just a matter of documenting that. And then we got to an agreement. So I switched into what they call special situations, which is an area of law where you're in high stakes, you're possibly in restructuring or potential restructuring spaces for how to navigate agreements. And ultimately, you're dealing with what I like to call no man's land, where there's a lot
Mhm.
of different rules of law that apply. It's not a specific practice area. So we're dealing with how trusts interact with particular claims and do they have a claim. We're looking at different ways of raising capital and under certain circumstances where people might have different levels of rights. So I had to analyze that. Ultimately, during this time, one of the projects I got was a global social enterprise. So they had a mix of nonprofits and for profits across different countries. And I had to figure out how to structure the thing. And our tax team, because of everything that happened with COVID, there was nothing but a ton of big deals available. They weren't available except for like a one call a month to check in and say yay or nay to what we did. So I had one strike to figure out, okay, what we're going to do with this. Otherwise, I have to wait a whole other month to get someone on the team to review and sign off. So I had to start diving in to tax and understand how it worked. And then I proposed a structure and they were like, that's brilliant. Like, that's perfect and it's brilliant and it's simple. And had figured out this is kind of where my gifts lie while doing that. And did also what we call corporate transactions, where we're interacting with tax on different types of transactions where, companies are purchasing or selling different components and we have to do diligence for it there. We're underwriting loans and dealing with different types of financing, including high yield financing and securities law. So I literally had to get a lot of exposure to a lot of different areas. And that is from having that business background. At some point, I was able to start connecting the dots because business people speak in one way, lawyers speak in another way. And um, I had both backgrounds.
Mhm.
And I think when I also started to look at my own life and my family's life and how this would have applied to them, how these rules would have changed so much of my life and my family's life and so many people like me, and people I know who are building businesses from my business school classmates. I started to think of how to explain things to them. And ultimately, I kid you not, around that time that I was thinking in that way, people started reaching out to ask me because they're doing something, they're starting a business, they're doing these things, they're getting all kinds of information, and they're asking me, because I'm the lawyer in the group, hey, what's real? What's not? Can you explain this? A lawyer told me to do this. And they were like, I didn't understand it when this lawyer explained it to me. But when you explain it to me, this makes sense. And if I'm asking them questions to get information, they're able to actually give me the information. They might say, I don't know if I'm understanding this, but here's the answer that I'm thinking, and here's why. All I did was ask them a question, but they knew to tell me enough. And that was exactly what I was asking them for. And it was situations like that that essentially helped hone confidence in my abilities.
So essentially, you just jumped in and learned on the fly.
That's the only way to learn.
Yeah. So you said a lot of different things here. So I want to make sure we touch all that. So like the first example you gave, you said the company share price basically was deemed worthless, and the person borrowed against those shares, and then was basically called on the shares. So basically, I guess we're gambling. They crapped out and lost it all. Now, was this like a publicly traded company? Was this a private company? Like, walk us through like the structure of how this person did this.
So yeah, these are publicly traded shares.
Okay.
So these are on, your NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange traded shares of a company. So I was on one of those bankruptcies. And we get the case so far ahead of when the public actually hears of the case. And
Hmm.
so you can see when things start changing. And sure, there's conversations about the company, its viability, its needs, and all of those types of discussions. You can see the kind of trail of questions from analysts in their various earnings calls. But ultimately, so I can, while we're working on the case, I pull them up you can look them up on Yahoo if you have a different provider or what have you for different quotes. Just monitor it over time and just watch the stock decline. And if, you're allowed to technically borrow, banks who do lending against shares will let you borrow up to about 50% of the value of the shares. But if all your shares are declared worthless, you are at a net negative. And what happens is you only pay the interest before when it's not called.
Hmm.
While it's growing, you're only paying the interest. The thing is, once they call it, now you have to pay the actual principal back. Well, if your source of paying the principal is less than what you need, you have to negotiate that. So it can change your lifestyle quite significantly.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a credit card. Like, you don't want to abuse it. It's there to use it. I know a lot of folks I've worked with. I've helped them. They don't even know what margin is. I'm like, well, if you would take from margin, and let's just say the interest rate is 10%, which is actually kind of high for margin, but you're going to pay 15% in taxes, you're saving that 5%. And then you could systematically like bring the money back. But obviously, if you borrow too much, that could work against you. What your story reminded me, I just like pulled it up here. I remember there was actually there was a third partner in Berkshire Hathaway that not a lot of people know about, named Rick, I think Guerin. And in the 1970s, he made a lot of risky investments. He got margin call, and then Warren Buffett actually bought his entire stake, which led him to owning more of Berkshire Hathaway. And so the idea was, I guess what Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger learned was they could use margin and things like that, and they would have made a lot more money. However, is it really worth it at times? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. One of the strategies we use was developed by Yale professors, and they say when you're younger, that younger investors could consider using margin so they can get more invested in the stock market while they're young, so that they can do less when they're older. So there's definitely strategies out there. It's not like mainstream because the large financial institutions don't want people using margin because it puts their company at risk. However, it can be a really good tool if you use it wisely.
And it's hard to know because here's the thing. If you have a company and you borrow even at less than 50%, like let's say you borrowed 15, 20% of your stock, and it looks like it's going up, right? The general trend is, and of course, you're a part of this company, you're operating it, you believe in it, and it's going up, 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 up. So you just stay at that level. The problem is 20% of 1 million is different when it becomes 500,000 because you
Yeah,
borrow.
totally.
Now you're at, you borrowed 200,000, but now the net value is 500,000. That's half. So now you're at 40% already. So
Hmm.
the fluctuations is what people have to balance against. And I think the thing that people take for granted and the risk in all of this is you have to budget for the circumstance when all the cards are stacked against you, even though you're hoping that they won't be. But chances are at some point in life, you're going to face that moment, the come to Jesus moment,
Hmm.
where the things that you can do to grow at that particular moment are stalling. And all the rocks that are falling and avalanching against you, there's just no trees or forest to slow those buddies down. And if you don't prepare, if you do and you build up that forest to slow the, avalanche down a bit, you may be able to bat things away or dodge some bullets. But ultimately, most people are looking at, oh, the stock is I have $1 million. I'm pulling out 20%. I'm staying well below the 50%. But what happens when it goes down to 50% or lower? There's always the strategy, and I'm a proponent of people going in eyes wide open, knowing that the the circumstances can turn. So what else are you doing? And then also, okay, are you pouring it in and doubling down on the same business, or are you diversifying? A lot of it is also knowing how to balance it out. And yes, for every gain you can get, as Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger would say, there's that risk. And it opens up the door for someone else who's played their cards right at that moment to take that opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we do use some margin, but we obviously don't abuse it because that would be silly. But it can be like a very useful tool. And
Of
like one
course.
of the things that like we do is we'll have companies in the margin accounts, and those companies pay dividends. So then we use the dividends to basically pay off some of the margin interest. So we're getting more
And then,
allocation and growth. The
correct.
dividends are paying off the, most, if not a portion of the interest. So that way it gives people time. So that way it's not just being consistently drawn down over
It's,
time because things take time
thank you.
with investments. Sometimes, uh, just a week ago, I happen to have really good timing on buying a very undervalued health company that's going through some situations right now. And then Berkshire Hathaway came out and reported it, and it goes up 20% in a week. But that doesn't happen all the time.
It doesn't. But you have that win, right? And so when you get those wins, those are great. And like I said, I am not against any particular strategy. I am for using the strategies properly, but knowing what risks are involved so then you can make educated decisions and do it in a way where you have dividends paying you back. The interest for the loan when you're using it for business can, not always, depending on how you're using it, but typically when you're using it for an active business can be a write off, right?
Hmm.
So versus, using the loan for the lifestyle. So people being able to make decisions that are going to serve their long run interests and then use that to build maybe passive income that can serve their lifestyle, but also cover that loan as a backup. Those are good strategies. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to a few business owners. I'm like, hey, like, did you know you could just open up an investment account in the name of your business? And most people have like never even heard of that. And they're like,
Oh,
what do you mean? I was like, well, if you have extra cash laying around and you've like maxed out all your tax deductions, you can start investing into something. And now you're creating an asset within your company. I mean, you could be a janitorial service and then you could create an asset that's separate from that. I mean, that's all that all these large companies do,
yep,
obviously at a bigger scale. But if you start putting a couple $1,000s away each year and your company grows and you're saving and you don't have to take that money out and pay income tax on it, you just keep it inside the corporation. You can build up a revenue stream so that if or when something happens in your business, you're like, oh, like I'm making money in different ways.
exactly. And one of the things that I also like to point out is there's very few taxes because everyone's like, oh, I have an LLC. It saves me taxes. An LLC does not necessarily save you taxes, not in and of itself. There's one tax that the LLC truly saves somebody on, and it's 3.8%, the net investment income tax, versus having something in your name. But if you also have something like you're mentioning, a C corporation where everything is in that container, then yes, it's only when you take the money out that it's taxed. And of course, it's taxed on the income that the business earns net of any expenses. So that's when a lot of people don't realize that, you know, the corporations, you can leave money in a business to help invest in growing that business. When you have an LLC, it's taxed as if it was you, unless you choose an alternate version of taxation. So choosing your legal structure and your tax structure can actually change your economics, as well as the moves that people make within their businesses can help them actually grow faster. So it's being thoughtful about the big picture of what you're trying to achieve. Yeah, having an investment account in your business, especially when you just put it away over and over time, it adds those buffers. When a lot of businesses had to add a lot of different tech and infrastructure during COVID. They were, you know, they had the retail store and everything else. And then they had that crunch where nobody could go to their business for a hot minute. And what do they do? The places that had buffers in place could adapt. The places that didn't had a harder time. And ultimately, it's very important for that compounding, for that investment to be done within the business, but also to treat ourselves like our own businesses, because the businesses actually facilitate our lives. And I think a lot of people think of business, corporation, it's so cold, it's this, it's that. For people who don't, and it's sometimes I hear it from clients and I'm like, they're making money from all of this, but they're almost, you know, beating themselves up for doing it. And I'm like, no, you're doing it that good. You've employed 33 people who would otherwise have to look for other employment. And teaching people to see what they're doing, if they're doing it with integrity as a net good, also, it's okay to not send your money to Congress that cannot use it as well as you do, because they can't seem to grow an economy, but they can shrink one pretty well. Ultimately, if you have a better use for it, that's the reason why that incentive was put in the tax code in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the rules are there for folks to take advantage of, yet most people don't take advantage of them, and then they just complain like, well, how do all these people get around it? Well, because they're playing within the rule book, and they've taken the time to either find people who know the rules or have taken the time to figure out how to shift things so that they can pay as little as income tax as humanly possible without crossing the line from avoidance to evasion.
Yes, there's legal avoidance,
That,
there's illegal evasion. And also, I
Mhm.
think some people don't know what the rules are. And they're like, well, how do these people know the rules? And I'm not going to lie and say that people don't gatekeep. There are people who do. And then there are people who don't gatekeep, but you won't believe them because it's so far fetched from what we've been taught. And I do think the fact that Americans in particular are not educated on how our actual system works hurts our society on the whole. We'd have a much more productive and entrepreneurial and entrepreneurial societies, even from the employee perspective. Employees who understand how to grow with their employer and through their employers would do much better. And, but like I said, there are some people, and look, if I meet a gatekeeper, I figure it's not that I'm not meant to know this information. I'm just not meant to work with that person.
Mhm.
So I just keep looking. And like I've learned from people who've been in the spaces for 40, 50 plus years. Some of them have been in they've been in the spaces longer than I've been alive or most of my life. Right. And I had the privilege to learn from those people. And I wouldn't have had access to this. My family didn't have access to this. I'm a first generation college student. Like my family did descend from slaves. Like my dad remembers a time where he saw the labels that said, as a kid, he couldn't drink from a certain water fountain. And, that impacts people. I'm blessed and I worked hard, but I'm blessed that I had the opportunities to see people and meet the people who I met and ask them questions. And were there people who I met who didn't answer my questions, who were rude and everything else? Yeah. And there were people who I met who were like, let me actually sit you down and answer this question. And here's what I'm thinking. Here's why I'm thinking it. And were there people who misinterpreted, I shift a lot because I'm someone who likes to move. They can interpret it one way. I met people who would interpret that as me being impatient with them. That's and it's like, no, I was actually curious about what they said. I've met the people who don't like that I'm bubbly. I don't know what to tell you. That's just my personality. Some things in life I'm willing to change, some things I'm not. That part I'm not willing to change. And I just had to make that decision and say, people are going to people. And I'm going to still be the best version of me that I can be. And then find the people who I can learn from and grow from. And rather than saying, well, I can't make it because of this. And I'm not saying that. I think of it like driving. I tell people when I teach my program, I call it gear shifting. And the reason why I call it that is because, like driving, most people don't say, I won't get on the road because there's a reckless driver out there. Because if you did say that, most people will tell you don't know how to drive. I'm not saying a reckless driver can't take you out. They can't make you pause, pull over, get off the road, take some, woosahs off the side, prayers and everything, or cause accidents. They definitely do. But that being said, we all have life to live. We don't stop living it because there are counter forces out there. And I think that's the difference is people need to know that you kind of have to get it like driving your own life, regardless of how other people interact. Some people are great drivers on every day but one because they just had a bad day. And it's not about you. That says more about them. But how you respond to it says a lot about who you are. So my thought is if I think I'm a good investment, then I'm going to behave like I'm a good investment, regardless of how other people respond. And I think when people get stuck in that cycle, it's really reminding them of how powerful they were created to be. And then creating a safe space for them to learn about these things because tax is super complex, but you don't need all the complex stuff and all the layered games to really move the needle. You can start with some of the basics and then start stacking them. And everyone wants to just dive in. And I'm like, no one scuba dives to the Titanic. And you have to build some, machines that can get down there because of all the pressure, right? If they're not built right, we saw a few years ago how that works. And so, which is unfortunate, right? But if we do things safely, we learn how to swim, we learn how to snorkel, then you work with people who are certified, licensed, know how to scuba dive, teach you the ropes, you have less risk of accidents. If you follow certain principles, and I like to tell people it's really a principles plus systems like math, relationship building that is really the wealth equation. And you're just driving those relationships, putting in more systems to keep building those relationships. That's what's going to yield the results. And it may not be the day you want it, but it does do it over time.
Yeah, over time, you have to change the playbook because what took you from day 1 to year 5 is not the same strategy you're going to use from year 5 to year 10 and so on. You have to be able to adapt and figure it out, especially like companies just starting out. They're like, I need sales, I need revenue. And then once they get there, those same strategies may not work anymore, depending on where their company's at. So you have to adapt. And I feel like too many people attempt to change the way they are to fit a current mold versus just be like, this is who I am. How do I find the right people who are attracted to who I am already so that it's like a authentic brand and an authentic voice? And right now, it seems like with social media, a lot of people are missing that. And I believe in the next 5 years or so, we're going to see who's real and who's not. Just over time, people fizzle out. The hype, more people know about what is it? Backstreet Boys versus 98 Degrees, bands come out with the one hit wonder, they get hot for a while.
I like 98 Degrees, but yes.
They were good, but they're not Backstreet Boys or NSYNC. They don't have the same repertoire.
They don't.
Just what's timeless? What's a timeless business and what's a AI business or a .com business? It's like, all right, we raised a bunch of money, we made a bunch of money fast, and then the company goes bankrupt and the people at the top walk away and the people at the bottom walk away with
nothing. Or less.
Looking for a new job, and then they have to explain what happened.
Exactly. And I do think there is something to be said for accountability, even for the people at the top, because at the long term game is you can't extract from people without giving before eventually it will come back to bite you. And a lot of people's trusts and estates are built off this economy running on a system of reciprocity. And those trusts have to invest in things that are driving growth and consistently. Otherwise, that generational wealth can impact the trust itself. And no one wants to think of their trust going bankrupt. Like that's the thing that the trust can last 1,000 years, but it has to be invested in something. This is the issue when you have the insurance companies, like during 2008, when you had the risk of insurance companies faltering, because you had insurance companies from way back in the 1800s had been around. And if those machines, the one that fell was more of a recent invention, which was fine. But if you look at it from the standpoint of what if those other institutions fell, if the institutions fold, any chance that of generational wealth any of us has goes. And if we're the ones disrupting that because we're not valuing relationships just to get the money in the short term, you can build it as fast as possible. But like cards stacked on top of each other, it just takes a nice gust of wind, to change the fate of that house of cards. And so ultimately, our employees being built into the system in a way that they also want to sustain the engine matters, because ultimately, that is one of the employer's greatest risks. If your employees don't perform their jobs to the fullest, the company fails. And there's a lot of investment that goes in that. And I think a lot of times when companies transition from the people who actually built it to executive leadership who didn't build it, they just rose through the ranks without that consciousness of the values of the company and what its true value in society is. That's when you see value destruction. That's when you see wealth destruction. That is why 90% of generational wealth is lost by the third generation. So great, people know how to get it. But the hard part is sustaining it and keeping it. And, we see this with, the lawsuits related and the attempted restructuring related to baby powder. It's one thing when you have a nice product where you didn't know that this was causing problems, but now you're taking steps to just try and hide it and avoid accountability. So that's one issue. But then you have the people who say, oh, well, because of all these flaws, I'm just not going to build. No, it doesn't work that way either. There's accountability, I think, on both sides. One, to create the path and create that shared vision and build a product, a service that actually keeps serving society. And you might go through distress. It could happen for any of those companies, because when you're growing, you make mistakes. You just have to get enough right to overcome those mistakes. And I think that authenticity, as you mentioned, that realness, that ethos that people are missing is going to be the bridge that allows people to keep going versus falling to the wayside and giving up when, okay, the quick money's gone.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that really irks me right now is I do follow some finfluencers just to see what people are saying, and all of them are just like, oh, high yield savings account, high yield savings account, high yield saving account. And yeah, I mean, if you have like extra money laying around, it's better than just having it in a normal account. What people don't realize is the dollar has been the best performing currency globally, and I believe it's lost like 99% of its value, and that's the best one.
Yes.
So what everything comes down to when you see like trade agreements, wars, most of it comes down to currency, because if a country doesn't have currency, they can't buy goods. If a country can't buy goods, people can't eat. And if people can't eat, bad things happen. And that's what we saw after World War I with Germany, and then obviously World War II with Germany again and Japan. Like basically their currencies were demolished and they can't buy anything from anyone. And what people don't realize is America is one of the only countries that doesn't have to trade, but we do trade for the global good of the world. I think that's where a lot of people don't understand. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we trade for the global good of the world, but here's the thing that most people miss and all of these trade relationships. The value of the currency is the value of your relationship with others. In the US, the value of its currency, the only thing that's really backing it is the U.S. military and naval power
Yeah.
have that's
The
and that
na the
it's
Navy is bigger than all the other world's navies combined.
and that is actually the value of the U.S. currency. I hate to be the one to break it to people, but that is, and it's a type of relationship, different kinds of relationships, and everyone wants the relationship where we're all hugging and sharing our best dishes at the potluck, and that's the ideal. But then you also have to have the relationships where people know if they don't show up in a safe way, not only are they not invited to the potluck, they will be escorted out, however necessary. And all of those systems have to be in place. And it has to be in place on the micro levels as well as the macro levels. And part of the currency devaluation we're experiencing is, the fact that we are taxed so heavily and our people can't produce. And then the products that our government is doing, it doesn't do it better than people who are closer to the communities. So my thought is people understanding how to first, because tax always follows the economics, the business structure, what you're actually doing and implementing. And a lot of people try to get ahead of that and just start on the tax side and play that game, which is fun and dandy, but not sustainable. You can win on the tax side and lose financially if you don't play it well, and then also have the added risk of potential penalties. So all that to say that if you can figure out how to get the engine going and then optimize it for tax, then you can do things that support your family, your community, your ecosystems. And the more of us who build that infrastructure out, then we have a stronger ecosystem than the government can ever build on its own. It actually needs that partnership, which is why the tax code was designed as it is, because it knows its people are creative. And that ability to create, we can get one of those things working. That's an economy right there for many people.
Yeah, a lot of business owners that I'll talk to, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go buy like a new truck, and I'm not gonna pay tax because I'm gonna buy this truck." And I'm like, "Well, you're not keeping anything. You're just buying stuff." So I mean, there's like those sort of folks in the business where they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna go buy like a new vehicle or this because I don't want to pay tax." It's like, well, now you're consuming, which is good for the economy. Like you're buying things. People love cookies, and in order to get cookies, you got to buy cookies, and we got to consume in order to keep the economy going. Because if people aren't buying and eating cookies, then the economy is going to falter. But then on the same time, it's like, well, you're only going to pay 20% tax, so you're keeping 80%, and then you use that 80% to build something versus just like, oh, I'm going to go buy this vehicle. That's what I see a lot with business owners. They're like, oh, I need a new truck every year or every 2 years.
Well, people are myopic. And I don't say that in a mean-spirited way, but we go for the thing that most benefits us in the moment, the short term, right? As opposed to thinking through the long term. And sometimes it's good. I'm okay with people getting the car, the truck, the ego boost, because if that keeps them going, it helps them with what they're doing. And it's like, why is it? It's thinking through the why. Why is it? Yes. And we need people to buy trucks, and we need people to actually get those, big tools. And okay, the tax code allows it, but it's for the purpose of your business. Yes, it can also serve your ego too.
Mhm.
It can do that as well. But the primary purpose should not be that. It should be something that actually allows you to drive what you're doing and the long term goal. And this is a part of it. I mean, I look at it when I hire somebody to clean my house and help me. I'm contributing to the economy.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, I can clean it myself. I can make the time, but I could also, it's like, if I have a choice, sometimes I have a choice between, you know, meeting with clients or cleaning my house because my schedule is that busy, right? If that happens, then why not hire somebody? So
Mhm.
it's allowing me to serve my clients, feel good about it, and have my own space clean. And then when I'm not that busy, then I can just do it myself because, okay, fine, I enjoy it. But it's not taking away from something else I would otherwise do. I think if you're buying the truck and it would otherwise prevent you from investing in your business, you're making the wrong decision. If you're buying it and it's like, no, this is actually the thing that will help me keep doubling down, into what I'm doing and growing it for myself and others. And it allows me to keep, so for example, you're going to visit rental properties or you're going from site visit to site visit. Do you need the luxury car if your company's not performing great? No, that's not the good time to do it. You have excess cash, it's lush, exciting, everything else. Maybe you can do it that at that point, but timing is everything too. It's putting in the full context. And yeah, this might make you feel better now, but when your company's stressed about paying that lease for that said truck, or, great, unless you got the bonus depreciation out of it. So then you could reinvest it into something else that actually did serve your business. If it didn't come with one of those types of benefits, was it really worth it? Like, yeah, you'll feel good in the fleeting moment, but I think oftentimes people will sacrifice the long term for the short term. And sometimes it just means having a little bit of short term pain for that long term goal. And I think tax is about balancing that because, like I tell clients all the time, I can make some maneuvers that will save you tax, but they can also make you cash poor in the moment. Is that what you want? I think it
We
is.
see a lot of that with non-business owners with primary housing.
Well, we're encouraged to do it too, right? And if you think about it from the standpoint of tax professionals, and because there's no actual license or certification that you have to be a tax professional. I'm an attorney, like a licensed attorney, but you don't have to be that. And so ultimately, what sells? Well, what sells is the nice marketing, the nice car, the sexy image, the beach vacation. And so if we sell that, then that markets and brings in the business. And part of that is just to give people ideas of what life they can live so they can dream bigger. But what no one tells them about that bigger dream, they have to have a deeper why. Because if you had to know that to get to that beach vacation with the luxury car, the Chanel bags, and all the whatever things that make, bling and glitter to you, if someone told you you had to walk on fire barefoot to get there first, you need to have a very good reason why that is you're going to walk over that fire and then be like relaxing in that payoff is there. And people skip over that part because it wouldn't sell.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about perspective. I've gotten to the point where I want as little holding me down as possible. So if it's like, hey, we want to go here for a month, we can just like get up and go. We don't have to worry about like who's gonna watch we don't have dogs or cats. Who's gonna watch the animals? Who's gonna, watch the house? Who's gonna mow the lawn? Who's gonna do this? Who's gonna do that? Life gets very complicated very fast when you start accumulating things.
It does.
And I feel like there's a lot of wealth in just being able to like pack a bag and be like, all right, I want to go here for X amount of time because I can, and I don't have to worry about all these other things that really don't matter in the long run.
Yeah. And I mean, and part of it is value systems. Like I'm a girly girl. I'll tell people in a heart minute, like in a heartbeat. I love the pets. Like when I get married, my poor husband, he's signing up for pets. I don't know what to tell him. I had to for a number of years. They passed on me recently. So taking my time before getting new ones. But he gets the best of both worlds. One, I'm always going to thank him for letting me have my pets. And so he's going to get all of the benefits of letting me have the pet. And when unfortunately they don't live as long as humans, somebody has to comfort me because I'm sad because we lost our pet. That's going to be his job too. And, we can bring the pets with us. We can. If not, we can hire a pet sitter. But I'm a girl. I like all the girly stuff. It's like the perfumes, the shoes, the bags. I like it all, but I don't necessarily have to have it all. I can shop in my closet. I'll tell somebody in a heartbeat, I'm just going shopping in my closet. And that's my way of looking at what I have, taking inventory, seeing what I can give away, seeing what's great for me and fitting me right now. And I do think there's a healthy balance, but yeah, guys, I think are not always, but as a traditional stereotypical rule, probably less likely to accumulate the stuff, except for like the big toys, the cars and everything else that make you more mobile, but they come with big repair bills. Whereas the girls are we nest. We gather all the sticks and twigs, bags, shoes, everything else, and we build that nest. So we are the ones who keep y'all stuck. But I do think, and I think in a good way, but it's one of those balancing acts where you don't want too much stuff where it overtakes your life and your life becomes about things, because it's really about those relationships. And then you don't want to say, I want to avoid things. And I think people, when it comes to the American dream, the home, my family lost our home when I was a kid. My dad's identity was stolen. So, like, having a home is one of those things that's like inherently important to me. But my family moves around a lot. So we can
Mm.
travel everywhere. But my husband, I'm like, once we may have one home that's a starter home, and then the other home we upgrade, that's our dream home. I don't want to go anywhere. Don't ask me to move. Like, we can visit, but we can't move. This is home. And that's what I need. So I think a lot of people want to get that dream home first. And I bought an apartment right after 2008 in New York City when the valuations went down, and I was able to get it for a very good deal. My first home was, at the time I bought it, 2.5 times the cost of my income.
Mhm.
The banks were like, we'll lend you up to 5. And I was just like, whoa, I had heart attacks when I saw the numbers that they were willing to lend to me. And I was just like, oh no, we're not doing that. I don't want to be house poor. The thing is, people have to boost their income so that they don't get in over their heads. If everything you see is X, what you make or more, even if the bank's willing to lend you that, sometimes you have to be the one to say no and say, you know what? I'm going to rent. I'm going to invest. I'm going to build something else so then I can get to something that is sustainable for me. And if you do it with that goal, I think in 2 to 7 years, you can get there. But you don't have to start off with your dream home to do it. You may get to something that, I could live in this as is for 5 to 10 years, or maybe make a renovation and it would be good enough for that time. But I can live in it now as is for like the next 1 to 2 years. If I need that renovation, we'll have saved up for it in that time. And I did that when I bought my place. It did not have a dishwasher. New York did not have those in many of the apartments. I put one in, redid my kitchen a little bit. Cost me a few $1,000s, but I had the money saved up for it. And I was able to make that change within the first year and loved that place. It was never going to be my forever home because I bought it as it was a 1 bedroom with they call it the junior 4. So it had like a second smaller room.
Mhm.
So ultimately a good spot, but I didn't make myself house poor to buy it. And at the same time, you know what? I have other vices. And I've had to learn how to manage those. My biggest vice is the fact that I have a bleeding heart. So I had to learn to say no sometimes to people that I love. And I didn't learn that lesson until I had done a little bit more damage than I really thought or hoped. But I had to learn that. And I say that to say, because I'm not perfect and I want people to know that they don't have to be either. They just have to be constantly growing and then seeing what are the things that can hold them back from their goals. And if I had known some of the things I knew now, I could have structured how I helped people in a way that also helped me. And that's not selfish. That just means if you can't fill up a pot and have holes in you, because eventually if you run dry, so do the others. And if you have this structured as one of those, water fountains we see in the store where they have the cups constantly moving and catching water, if you structure it like that, then everyone stays full. And that's the way it's designed when you build out a system of wealth and make these unconventional money moves that, you're talking about in your podcast. The way you're doing it is to keep filling that cup.
Yeah. I think Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, said it best. He's like, whenever people hit him up for money, he says, this isn't a loan. They give you the money and never call me again for any more money. This is all I'm going to ever give you. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, you could also say no. You don't have to give people anything. No one's entitled to anything that you've earned on your own. And sometimes it's painful, but people will take advantage of a kind person and see how far they can take it at times. And it's a good trait to have, but you got to know how to set that boundary and set it hard. But
Yes.
yeah, um, it was fun. Shannon, anything else for Royal Legal Solutions? Like you like to say before let you get back to the rest of your day?
Yeah. So just with Royal Legal Solutions and the work that I do there, I mean, I'm so glad that they brought me in. This is the approach that I get to take with clients. And so for people who are really looking for a a holistic solution. Like, I'm an attorney, I work with our CPA, we come up with solutions together. And a lot of times people have to go source an attorney somewhere, a CPA somewhere. They're not working together. And I've found so many problems for clients where they've had things filed incorrectly. They're at huge risk for audits, or they're not getting the strategies or taking advantage of the strategies that they need. And for me, people meet with me, I want to understand them. I want to understand what life they're really trying to build in their goals. And we take this approach with our clients to not only help you build a wealth system from the standpoint of the cold, hard legal and tax, but we're looking at it through the end game of your life and really helping you build that out. And would love for people who are interested, they can connect with Royal Legal Solutions. You might see me there. I would love to meet you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for hopping on. We'll see everyone next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.